I always thought I knew my mother. Strict, graceful, a woman of structure and routines. She never talked much about the past, especially not about the time before I was born. So when she passed away and left me a box labeled for Emma, only when I'm gone, I thought it was just old photos, maybe a letter, maybe nothing. Inside the box was one thing, a necklace. Not just any necklace, a delicate silver chain with a sapphire pendant. I had never seen her wear it, not once in my entire life, but it looked worn, like it had been touched often, cherished. There was also a short note tucked beneath it. This was given to me by someone I love deeply. I wore it every day until the day I left him. Emma, if you want to know who I was before I became your mother, find the name carved into the back. My hands were trembling. I turned the pendant over. It was faint, but there, scratched into the metal, was the name, Julian. I had never heard that name in my life. It wasn't my dad, wasn't any family member I knew, and that was the moment I realized there was a version of my mother I had never known. And now I couldn't stop until I found him. I spent the rest of that evening staring at the necklace, turning it over in my hand, reading the name again and again like it might suddenly mean something. Julian. I searched through every photo album, every box in the attic, every letter my mom ever saved. Nothing, not a single mention of a Julian. My father, well, the man I always thought of as my father, died when I was 12. I had memories of him, but they were fuzzy, warm, distant, like a photo left in the sun too long. And Mom never really talked about him either. Just a soft smile and, he was a good man, whenever I asked. But now, I wasn't so sure. That night, I called my Aunt Claire, Mom's younger sister, the only one still alive from her side of the family. Emma, she said, her voice groggy, is everything okay? I found something after Mom passed. There was a pause. She left me a necklace, I continued, with a note. She said it was from someone she loved before I was born. There's a name engraved on the back, Julian. Do you know who that is? The silence on the other end wasn't just hesitation. It was recognition. Claire? She sighed. I haven't heard that name in a long time. So she did know him. I need to know the truth, I said. Please. Her voice lowered, almost like she was afraid the past might hear her. Julian was complicated, she said. They met when your mom was in college. He was older, charming, a musician, I think. The kind of guy who walks into a room and suddenly everyone's laughing. I leaned forward on my couch, gripping the phone tighter. They were inseparable. I thought they'd get married. But then something happened. Something changed. Your mom came home from a trip one summer and she was different, quiet, sad. And then she never mentioned him again. I swallowed. Did she tell you what happened? No, Claire said softly. And I never asked. But I remember one thing. The last time I saw him, he gave your mom that necklace. And she was wearing it every day. Until she wasn't. After the call, I stared at the necklace again, as if it could talk. I still didn't have a last name. No photo, no location. Just Julian. And a past I wasn't supposed to know. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I logged into my mother's old email account. She had left the password written in a notebook, probably assuming I'd need it for bills or legal things. But I wasn't looking for spreadsheets. I typed Julian into the inbox search bar. Nothing. Then I tried the sent folder. Still nothing. Just when I was about to give up, I opened the drafts folder. There was only one draft. No subject. No recipient. It said, Julian, if you're still out there, I'm sorry, I should have told you. I should have said something before it was too late. But by the time I realized, I was already someone else. I was already her mother. Emma deserves to know the truth. Maybe now she will. My hands shook. It was written just 2 months ago. I knew what I had to do next. I needed to find Julian, who he was, where he went, and why my mother never wore that necklace again. But first, I had to ask the one person I had been avoiding, my godfather, Daniel, a man I hadn't spoken to in years, a man who used to say, "Your mom had a whole life before you, Em. One day, you'll understand why she never talked about it." Maybe that day was today. Daniel lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Boston, in a house that smelled like old records and dark roast coffee. He hadn't changed much. Same thick-rimmed glasses, same slow way of talking like every word had to be chosen with care. He looked surprised when he opened the door and saw me. "Emma," he said, "it's been a long time." "I need to ask you something," I said, "about my mother and Julian." His smile dropped. We sat at his kitchen table. I placed the necklace on the surface between us. He didn't touch it, but he looked at it like it was radioactive. "She kept it," he whispered. "All these years." "So you knew him?" Daniel nodded. "He was a friend. More than a friend once, but your mother loved him. She never stopped." "Then why did she leave him? Why did she pretend he never existed?" Daniel leaned back and rubbed his forehead. "You're sure you want to know all of this?" "I need to." He stood up and walked into another room. When he came back, he held a faded envelope. "I promised I'd never send this unless she asked me to. But now, she's gone, and you're here." He handed it to me. It was addressed to Julian Ward. Inside was a letter. "Julian, I never stopped thinking about you, about us. I kept your necklace all these years, hidden like a secret I was too afraid to carry. I should have told you the truth back then. I should have told you I was pregnant. Her name is Emma. She's everything I hoped she'd be, and she deserves to know where she came from, who you are. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but if you do, please find her. Tell her the truth I never could. I'm sorry. L." I stared at the page. It blurred in front of me. Julian was my real father. My whole life. Every bedtime story, every lullaby, every whispered "I love you" was built on a silence so deep, I hadn't even known to question it. I sent her the letter as a scanned PDF. No fancy formatting, no introduction, just his words, unfiltered. An hour passed, then 2. By evening, I thought maybe I had made a mistake. Maybe I'd reopened a wound that was never meant to heal. But at 9:47 p.m., a new message arrived in my inbox. "Sarah, thank you for sending this. I've read it 5 times already. I cried on the 2nd, laughed on the 4th, and now I want to talk to you. In person, if that's something you're willing to do. There's something you deserve to know. Yakrtesahama Liza." 2 days later, I was on a train to Vermont. The whole ride, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. His voice, the way he never talked about the past, the way my mom sighed when I mentioned Eliza, the letter, the photograph. And now, this strange new feeling that I was on the edge of something much bigger. When I got to her small town, she was already waiting in front of a cafe. She was older now, of course. Her hair was silver and short, her coat neatly buttoned. But when she smiled, there it was. The same smile from the photo. Soft, radiant, unforgettable. She ordered tea. I got coffee. Neither of us touched our drinks. For a while, we just talked about nothing. The weather, the train ride, the bookstore across the street. Then she looked at me with those calm sea glass eyes and said, "You know, he asked me to marry him once." I blinked. "I didn't know that." She nodded slowly. "He did, right on that beach where the photo was taken." I said yes. And then 2 weeks later, he was gone. Gone. He disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a note that said, "I'm sorry, I'm not who you think I am." And then nothing for the rest of my life. I was speechless. She smiled gently. Until now. I showed her the photo. She touched it like it was something sacred. I loved him, she said. I never stopped, even when I hated myself for it. I couldn't look away. Then, almost casually, she said it. Sarah, I don't think he ever told you the whole truth about your birth. My breath caught. What do you mean? She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the teacup. When we were together, I got pregnant. The room tilted. But he never knew. I never told him. I was angry. I thought he had abandoned me. I moved on. I married someone else. But I miscarried. I stared at her, confused. Number? Then she added, but I never stopped wondering. What if he had another child? One he didn't tell me about? There was a long silence between us. Then I finally said it. What are you saying? And she looked me in the eye and said, I don't think Michael was your biological father, Sarah. I think he was your stepfather. And I think he lied to protect someone else. My world spun. My memories. My childhood. Every birthday, every bedtime story, every whispered, I love you, from a man who may not have been my father after all. The train ride home felt heavier, like I was carrying more than just a story. I was carrying someone else's life. I kept replaying Eliza's words. He lied to protect someone else. Who? Why? And what was my mother hiding in those last years of her life? When I got back, I started digging. Old notebooks, bank records, emails I'd ignored for years. That's when I found the folder. It was buried deep in a drawer I had never opened, under my mother's sweaters, wrapped in a scarf that still smelled faintly like her perfume. Inside the folder were printed documents, hospital records, and a small leather-bound journal. No name, no date, just 2 letters etched into the corner. J.W. Julian Ward, Nanisi Siddiqui. The journal wasn't complete. Pages had been torn out, deliberately. But what was left felt like pieces of him. August 14th. I held her for the first time today. Her eyes were wide open, quiet, curious. Linda said she has my eyebrows. I don't see it, but it made me smile. August 20th. I don't know how to be a father, but I want to try. God help me, I want to try. September 2nd, they told me to leave, said I was a risk, said I had associates that made me dangerous. I wanted to scream, I wanted to stay. But Linda looked at me like she already knew I was going to walk away. And so I did. That was the last entry. I scanned the rest of the folder. There were court papers from the early 1990s, a restraining order, and one name repeated over and over, Nathaniel King. Not Julian, someone else. I looked him up. Nathaniel King had been an investigative journalist in the 80s, specializing in political corruption. He disappeared in 1991, declared dead in absentia in 1999. But there were rumors, conspiracies, blog posts from the early internet days claiming he was alive, living under a new identity. A name popped up, Julian Ward. I sat frozen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. If my father had once been Nathaniel King, if he faked his death, changed his name, vanished, what was he running from? The next day, I returned to Daniel's house. He didn't look surprised to see me. I found the journal, I said, and a name, Nathaniel King. Daniel closed his eyes. Jesus. So it's true? He nodded slowly. He never meant to stay gone forever. But things got complicated. Complicated how? Daniel hesitated. Then, in a low voice, he wasn't just a journalist. He uncovered something dangerous. The kind of thing people disappear for. I stared at him. Like what? I don't know, not exactly. He never told me everything. But I do know this. He didn't leave because he stopped loving your mother. He left because he thought staying would kill her. I drove home in silence. When I got there, a new email was waiting for me. No subject, no signature, just a single line. If you want the truth, come to the place where she wore the necklace. Attached was a photo. My mother, younger, standing on a cliff above the sea, wearing that necklace. On the back of the photo, in ink that had faded but still clung to the page, Pine Cliff, Maine, summer 1994. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't know what I was chasing anymore, a man, a memory, or a ghost, but I knew I was getting close, too close to stop now. Pine Cliff, Maine, was smaller than I expected, a scatter of houses, a general store, and the ocean. Endless and quiet. I found the cliff easily. The same one from the photo. It hadn't changed much. Same crooked fence. Same stubborn wildflowers leaning into the wind. I stood where she had stood. And then I saw it. A figure, waiting at the edge. He turned when he heard my footsteps. Gray hair, deep lines. But the eyes, they were the same as mine. "Sarah," he said. I froze. "Julian?" He nodded. "I wasn't sure you'd come." My voice cracked. "You're alive." A bitter smile. Not the way I used to be. We sat on a bench someone had carved from driftwood. The sea roared quietly behind us. "I saw your letter," I said. "I figured you would, eventually." "Why now? Why reach out after all this time?" He looked down at his hands. "Because I'm dying." The wind stilled. "Cancer," he said. "Doctors gave me months. I didn't want to leave without at least trying to explain." And so he told me everything. How he'd been born Nathaniel King, a reporter who'd uncovered evidence of a covert operation run by a U.S. agency, a black ops program that assassinated foreign leaders. The proof he had could have destroyed lives, governments. When he refused to stay quiet, threats followed, then attacks. His apartment burned down, a colleague vanished. He had two choices: disappear or die, so he became Julian Ward. He didn't tell my mother at first, thought he could protect her by staying close. But when the danger reached her, an unmarked car, a slashed tire, he left to save her. "I loved her more than anything," he said, tears in his eyes. "But I was a coward. I thought silence was safer than truth." I asked him about the necklace. She gave it to me before I disappeared, told me to keep it close, that it was all she had left of her mother. I kept it in a box for years. I never wore it. I couldn't, it hurt too much. But then, why wasn't she wearing it in the photo? He smiled sadly. "She put it on that one day, said it made her feel brave. She took it off right after. That's why you only ever saw the photo. She never wore it again." We sat for hours, talking, remembering. And then I asked the last question. "Were you my father?" He looked away for a moment, then back into my eyes. "No," he said, "but I loved you like you were, from the moment I saw you." My breath caught. So who was? He reached into his coat and handed me an envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, a name, one I didn't recognize. He saw the confusion on my face. "He was a friend, someone your mother trusted. He died before you were born. She never wanted you to know." I stared at the name, at the loops of ink, at the past I would never fully hold. And then I looked at Julian, or Nathaniel, the man who left, who ran, who suffered in silence. And I forgave him. He passed away 3 months later. I scattered his ashes from that same cliff, the necklace, her necklace, around my neck. I didn't wear it for style or sentiment. I wore it because now, finally, I understood. My mother never wore the necklace because she didn't need to. Her strength wasn't in silver, it was in sacrifice, in silence, in surviving. And now that strength lives in me.